One thing I should have mentioned at the start of the video is the main question: why am I even going to do this video upgrade to this guy? You can buy emulators, you can buy the Atari Flashback, and it does have the composite video as opposed to this RF coax kind of video. And the reason is those emulators are just no good. There's a bunch of games it doesn't play right or doesn't play at all. The sound is definitely messed up in an emulator. For some reason, sounds, I don't know why, but they just don't work right. And those wireless joystick things are junk. They're horrible. So it's much better to have a good old-fashioned Atari 2600 that can take the cartridges. It's not an emulator, and it's got wired joystick ports. If you need the joysticks to reach further across your living room, you can just get an extension cable. I think that's a much better way to go than any kind of emulator or one of those flashbacks or what have you. Okay, so we're moving on to the actual video mod. Now that we got it all clean and all the switches are nice, we need to give it better video. So here's the little kit, and according to the instructions, the very first thing I need to do is remove a transistor. So it's probably going to be hard to see, but right there, that little black transistor thing, which is sort of under this red gizmo. I'm not great with electronics. I'm not sure what this red gizmo is, but I think it may have something to do with RF frequency. But anyway, below that red crimson looking thing, there's this transistor right there. It's got 3 leads, and you have to remove it. I am not going to desolder it. I've desoldered a few times. It basically involves using a soldering gun, and you use this metal wicking wire, and when you heat up the metal wicking wire, it'll sort of suck up the solder. It's called desoldering. So if you're really good at electronics, you can do that and just desolder it and pull it right out of there. But I found using it pretty difficult, so it's much easier just to snip it. So I'm going to snip it off, and you do need this kind of wire cutter, the kind with a real nice sharp point, because it's going to be hard to reach in there. So make sure you have the good kind of wire cutters that can snip right at the very last millimeter of the cutters and reach in there, and we're going to snip off the 3 leads connecting that to the PCB board. Okay, just a reminder that if you're uncomfortable with these steps, you're worried that you might break your Atari, you haven't done a lot of soldering, desoldering, you should stop, because, you know, if you don't know what you're doing, there's a chance you could wreck things here. So just a reminder of that. Okay, so here's the transistor that we removed. It's very small, hard to read, but I believe the number on it was 3563. And now that we're about to attach the little PCB board that gives it the improved video, you need to make sure you know the wires, because there's different kits you can buy online, and they have different wires, different colors of wires. So make sure you know which colored wires go with which input and output pins, so you hook it up correctly. So for example, I looked up mine, and actually on mine everything's marked right on the PCB board, so it's easy to tell, but there's going to be 4 input wires. The red is going to be the power, it's 5 volts. The green's going to be the audio, yellow's going to be the video, and black is going to be the ground. The output wires, they're on the other side of the board. Green will be the audio, yellow will be the video, and black will be the ground. You need to make sure you write this down, because again, the different kits that you buy online will have different colors wires, and so you need to obviously make sure you hook up the right connection to the right pins. If you don't know what you're doing, you could damage. Obviously, if you hook up this 5-volt power to the wrong pin, you're going to mess things up. So make sure you know what you're doing. And the next step is going to be to remove from this RF area, which is encased in metal, there's a little board right here, and you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pins going to that board. The connections that we're going to make are going to go to those 5 pins, and we're going to take that board off. So, same thing I said a minute ago about desoldering. Somebody who's good at electronics will desolder those 5 pins, That way when they make their connections to their wires, they can put the wires right through those holes and solder it from the back side just like you're supposed to do when you do soldering. Since I don't feel that confident with it, what I'm actually going to do is snip those 5 pins, bend them over, and make my soldering attachments right to those pins. Again, somebody who's really good at soldering and electronics probably would hate to hear that. That's not really the right way of doing things. But since I don't feel that great about desoldering, that's what I'm going to do. Okay, I tinned all the ends of the wires, which basically means heating up the end with the soldering gun and putting a little coating of solder on the end. That way it makes it a lot easier to make the connections. And I have my little flashlight man here, Gizmo, holding the wire in place. So I'm going to zoom in on the wire. It's going to be hard to see. Here, let me turn off the flashlight. Okay, so there you go. If you can see that, it's the black wire going to pin 1, red is going to pin 3, and yellow is going to pin 4. Pins 2 and 5 are not used yet. And I had this all written down so I make sure I do it correctly. And again, depending on the kit that you get, the colors of the wires should be different, could easily be different. So just make sure you know which ones are going to which space and which pins, and write it down so that you get it going to the right place. So now that those 3 are done, the last wire we have as far as the input wires is this green one, and we're going to have to flip the board over and connect that to the underside because the connection point is actually hidden by this little metal cage. I think the RF stuff is underneath that metal cage, so you can't get to the point where you need to connect that. So even though it's bad practice to hook a wire on the underside of the PCB board, we really have no choice unless we want to take this whole thing off. So we're just going to flip it and connect that wire on the underside. Okay, the last wire that was left over was the green wire, and it connects to the main board. So just to review, here's the black, red, and yellows that were connected to pins 1, 3, and 4. However, the last wire, green, right here, is going over to the main board. I flip it over. You can see the cartridge toward the top of the board. Flip it over. So cartridge is now at the top, but we're on the underside. Along the left, and I'm going to zoom in, you can see right where the green wire is attached, right there. So very hard to describe. All I can do is show it on the video. I'm sure there's a lot of good instructions online if you want to look it up, but there's the PCB board flipped over, the main board. Zooming in along the left side, there is a pair, wait for it to focus, there are a pair of unused pins, and the green wire goes to the right side of that pair of unused pins. Put a little solder and make that connection. And we are ready to move to the 3 output wires. And the last component to be removed is resistor R213. It's on the main board. So here's the main board with the cartridge slot. Look right along down the bottom, and you can see where I snipped it out. It's upside down, but R213. See the missing spot right there? There was a resistor there, and I just snipped that out. Again, same thing I've said a bunch of times. If you're good at desoldering, go ahead and do that. I just snipped it out. And that should be it for the components. Now it's just time to make a little spot where our new RCA plugs are going to go, and we are done. The main PCB board is back inside its cage, and there are 2 screws holding it in place. And then you go ahead and put the bottom shield on this cage and put those 4 screws in place. And note the green wire, I wasn't sure where it should come out because it's going to get squished, but for some reason there's these 2 ports on the left and right of this cage. Maybe it's for expansion, maybe it's for doing things just like this, but anyway, it seems to be a place where wires can go in and out. So the green wire is coming out from this cage using this little port that's on the side, and then you can screw it back together. And now we're just gonna put it all back together carefully into place. Okay, when you put it back together, make sure the 6 little felt things are back on the switches. When I had mine upside down, the little felt things fell off, so put them back on. put the little connector back on. I'll call it a ribbon cable for lack of a better term. Make sure that's back plugged in. And you might as well take out the old coax black video cable, because that's not going to work anymore. That's not really connected to anything, so why have a confusing video plug coming out of the thing? So go ahead and remove that, because we're going to have a new video port. And now we're ready to put the 2 screws into this switchboard to put it back down. So you'll see make sure that when you were jostling it that your connection stayed. So it looks like my yellow, red, and black cables are still connected. The green one is still coming from the underside of this cage, and it looks like it's all ready to go. So now we cut a hole, actually 3 holes in the case for where the 3 new RCA plugs are going to go. So I put them here on the side. You could put them wherever you want. Maybe even, it probably would have been better just to put them in the back right where the original video was, but for some reason I thought I'd like to make it more obvious that this has been modded, so I thought I'd put them on the side. So here you go. Red for right audio, white for left audio, and yellow for video, composite video. Make a little pilot hole, and then you actually use a 1/4-inch drill bit to make the right size hole. There's a nut on the other side that holds it in place, and I would recommend maybe making a little better spacing. I spaced them 1/2 inch apart, and it was a little tight to get in there and work. It was sort of hard to put the nut on the other side and screw it down, so maybe leave a little bit more spacing than 1/2 inch like I did. But anyway, those are the 3 connections. So the last thing we'll do is wire up those output wires. The ground wire goes to the ground on all 3. So on mine, that's the black wire. The audio wire goes to the other end on the red and white. So on mine, that's the green. And lastly, the yellow goes to the yellow video. So black ground to all 3 to the ground end, and to the other end it's green wire to the 2 audio left and right, because the Atari is just mono. So if you want to play it on a modern TV, you have the same audio going to both sides, both the right and the left, so you don't have sound just coming out one side. And like I said, and hook up the video. And then you can use some double-sided tape to stick down the new little video PC board so it doesn't move around. So everything looks good, and we will put it together and test it out. Okay, last thing is to clean it all up. Lots of wipes, lots of Windex, lots of little Q-tips, because, you know, the ridges in this thing get really disgusting. So this one was horrible, but after many you can, it's just plastic, you could just take it up to the kitchen sink and wash it off if you want, but I just used a bunch of wipes and Q-tips, got it all nice and clean. And note one thing, if you give this a try, you can see that I was too high up in the case because I didn't realize this top panel sits down inside a little bit. See how it sits down inside? So these, I should have made the RCA jacks a little bit lower because you can actually see the wiring from when I connected those. So I learned something for you if you give this a try. Make these RCA jacks a little bit lower down in the case, because when you put the top panel back on, it's gonna sort of sit down in there, and you want to give it enough room. Okay, so let's take a look. It's all put back together. I have it plugged into a modern television. On the side is the video and audio left and right plugs, you know, these types of plugs, RCA plugs. So we've got the output coming out of the 2600, and we'll just show a couple of games for a second. So this is Defender. And we'll press the start button. So it probably doesn't come out too well just videoing it off the TV screen, but you get the idea. It's now composite video. Looks a lot better than the RF channel 3, channel 4 thing. Let's pop in a couple others. This one is Berserk. And press start. So you can see it looks pretty good. Again, better than the RF. And last one, we'll put in Centipede because it has a little, Centipede has a little, little sort of Atari symbol thing in the beginning. It looks pretty good. That'll give you an idea of the video. So there you have it. Cleaning up. Oh, all the switches, by the way, work too. The difficulty switches and everything. So this is cleaning up and restoring a 2600 and adding the composite video. Thanks for watching.